Check 1, 2, 3. Audio test for mic number 2. This is a audio test. Audio test for mic number 2. Mic check 1, 2, 3. Number 3. Mic check 1, 2, 3. Audio. One, two, three. Audio test for mic number 9. Mic.
Sid, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
You can hear us loud and clear, Sid?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Can you hear
excellent.
me?
We can hear you also.
we waiting on?
No, Sid, he's in, he's in.
Okay. Okay. Ready? Okay, welcome. I'd like to call to order the work session budget meeting of the Pelham Board of Education, Wednesday, February 28, 2024. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'll ask Mr. Rowe for a reiteration of the executive session motions.
We entered executive session for the purposes of discussing the employment history of a particular person and the proposed acquisition, sale, transfer, or lease of real property.
Okay, thank you. This is our first budget meeting, so we're very excited to hear that presentation. And definitely a big thank you to all the administrators in the audience. Appreciate your hard work. Thank you, Jackie, and everybody in the business office I know has been working hard on this. I hope everybody had a wonderful Mud Week break. And I think people did get some rest and relaxation. I know many board members were also focused on the stormwater project over the break and thinking very seriously about that. I want to make sure that everybody understands that we do support the project, and we certainly want the flooding situation to be improved throughout Pelham and Westchester. And of course, our school district is directly affected with Colonial School, and the entire district had to be closed not too long ago for a flooding event. So we do want to find a way to work collaboratively with the Village of Pelham on a solution that works for the village, the affected residents, and the school district.
I want to add a couple of things about the whole flood situation and the mitigation, the detention system. So I know that this is an enormous problem for Pelham, the flood situation. I know it's obviously southern Westchester, but for Pelham, it's a major problem. And this has been weighing heavily on me for a few months now, ever since this came across, to us. And what I want to say is that, and I'm going to speak for myself, so anyone else who wants to chime in, obviously, I am in favor of us as a board and a school district supporting a solution to the flooding in Pelham. And so for me, what that is not an easement. And I think that's going to upset some people to hear that. But I want to explain, I'm not saying no to fixing the problem. What I'm saying is an easement is not the right solution for the district. For the district, it just doesn't make sense because of the enormity of the project for us to grant an easement to put in this large detention system and the pumps. The solution that I feel makes a lot of sense is a transfer of property. And the way I see it is that we didn't start off the school year thinking, what are we going to do with that property over on north side of Pelham? The village came to us with a problem, a serious problem, and asked us to be a part of the solution. And as a school district that's part of a community that's a very tight-knit community, I personally wanted to be a part of that solution. And I think prior to being on the board, I probably would look at this whole thing and say, well, just grant the easement. It's blacktop, right? Being now on the board, I have a different perspective. I've also learned more, but I also have a responsibility not to just, I have a responsibility to the school district that forces me to not only think about what's best for Pelham, but I also have to think about what's best for the school district. And as I thought about this, it doesn't have to be an us-them, because I really don't like the way this is kind of transpired. It doesn't have to be that way, because I know individually we all want the same thing. And so as I thought about it, a project of this size, in my opinion, it requires a transfer. Something that is as enormous as this, that comes with risks and a whole lot of other work that would be involved in having this on-school property, would make it such that it just doesn't make sense for us. So a transfer of property does mean a vote. And I think that that's the reality of the situation. I don't believe that we would be putting, flood mitigation on the ballot. It's not about that for me. It's about the fact that the reality of the situation is, to sell school property, you need to vote. And so with that, I believe the town would actually vote yes. I think I would be the first one. I will be knocking on doors because I want to be a part of this solution. I am just not in favor of the easement path, but I am in favor of the transfer path. So that's just, wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Anne Marie, I agree with you. I am in full support of the stormwater project. In the village of Pelham, across Pelham Manor has a project as well. The other thing I wanted to mention is we also want to preserve, or I'll speak for myself, we also want to preserve Julian's playground in whatever project is considered at Julian's. And like you, while I'm not for the easement for all the reasons that you just stated, I do think a transfer or a sale of the property makes sense for this.
So,
I would just add, and sorry, Natalie, go ahead if you want.
we could go.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I would just add, I've said this before, but I really believe that there's a path here to a resolution of this that is good for the district, helps the district, in addition to helping the village.
So I'll reiterate what my colleagues, my fellow trustee, board members have said. Look, we all want to be part of the solution. But there are certain things that when you sit on this board and you have a fiduciary duty to this board, you understand, and you have to abide by it. We cannot disregard a vote. If it goes into a vote, it's not something that I am willing to do. If the voters vote no, I am not willing to disregard that. Having said that, I think the vote, which we've done 2 in the last 5 years, have gone well, and 1 failed, and this board did not disregard that vote. So as a member of this board, I think the way forward is, if there is a proposal or anything that we put forward, it has to go through a vote. And I do believe this community would stick together and, do what it needs to do. But whatever happens in that vote, we have to then abide by that vote. We cannot do a fail-safe. I'm an immigrant. English is my second language. I've never heard of that before. But what I understand that means is we would do an easement even after the community has voted no, which I don't think they will, but, But I want to say we do have a path forward. I believe we do. And I believe, it has to be put out for a vote.
Yeah, I would I would concur with my colleagues. The thing about an easement is that if an easement is granted, what that allows is the village to then be able to put all of this equipment on underneath the ground, on top of the ground, but the school district still retains ownership. And so that's the fundamental point, that the school district would then own a piece of property, and yes, we could make lots of attempts to indemnify the school district against, future issues for which there almost certainly will be, and that's just not a burden that it makes sense for the district to own that property. I would imagine the village would want to own the property so they have full control to be held accountable, to make sure the whole thing works. So I would definitely say we want to be part of the solution, as all of my colleagues said. You know, we are victims of it too, and so a transfer of ownership, we want to explore that. There are certain things that we'd want to make sure are part of that transfer. One is a preservation of Julianne's playground, which it seems like the village is committed to do. But otherwise, it's their project, and I think with full ownership, then they have the ability to execute the way that they want. And so I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense. Whereas again, an easement carries along with it the liability that we as a school district would own a piece of property upon which that's just not the maintenance responsibilities, all of that. It doesn't make sense for the school district to bear that responsibility.
Yeah, and I think the only sort of clarification I'd make or addition is that, you know, when we talk about transfer of property, I wouldn't want people to think, because we are talking very generically here, you know, that a transfer is just a gift. I think that the way I certainly see it, and I think my colleagues on the board see it the same way, is that, you know, we are willing to explore transfer of property in some kind of transaction that would leave the district kind of no worse off. And so it wouldn't just be a straight out gift, it would be a transfer for some kind of consideration which has not been designed yet. So it's not a straight up gift. I don't think it would be a straight up gift, it would be a more nuanced transaction than that.
Yes, I think we're all wanting to find a way to say yes. A way forward, as Sid said, that's positive for the village and for the school district. And we are genuinely working hard to find a way to say yes. Let's solve this problem, yes.
Can I make a motion?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yes, okay. So I'd like to make a motion for the Board of Education to authorize representatives to explore a transfer of the property for consideration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any other comments or
And
questions?
the only amendment I'd want to make is just something that just reaffirms the commitment to Julianne's playground and
Yeah,
that legacy.
makes sense.
And,
Are we
sorry,
adding?
if I may, are we adding? I don't think you need to add it,
Okay,
but
John,
I'll
you
just
said-
say that any exploration would also, I think, include as one of its top priorities the concerns of the residents who live in the immediate neighborhood. I don't think that needs to be in the motion. I'm just stating
Oh,
that.
I know, I'm just taking notes.
And the motion says authorize a representative. Is that the language you used?
Authorize representatives.
Mhm. I think that is important because we have, and I counted up the minutes, and it's hours, it's in the hours. This is a very important issue, but I've made a pledge to the community that I will be focused on education, and we need our administrators and our board focused on education, especially as we're coming into our strategic plan, our budget. So I would that I think is an important point. We're authorizing representatives, and I guess I would just ask that the village come to the table and work with our representatives so that we can move forward on the stormwater project, but also yes, on the primary mission of the school district.
This is not for the motion.
Okay.
I'm just putting this out there, maybe I said it before. I would just like this to be a reset, like a reset button on this whole thing, right? Like, let's reset where this conversation has gone, and and the interactions or lack of interactions, and just have this go forward in a very positive way. So I'm just want to say that.
Putting that out in the universe.
In the universe, yes. You don't have to put it in the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. We do have our council here that's aware of all of our authorization and direction, so I'm really looking forward to moving forward in a positive direction. Okey dokey. Okay, should I appoint a clerk pro tem? Yeah. So item 3.1, motion to appoint clerk pro tem, which will be Dr. Champ. Second, and let's do this and then we can do that, sure.
Do you get a second on that?
Sec-
Second.
Okay,
Thank you.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. One other quick thing, I want to do a recognition. A big thank you to Dr. Bowman. I'll let you.
Yes, and on our agenda tonight, begrudgingly, we tried to turn it away, but later on in our personnel agenda tonight, I will be asking the board to accept the resignation of Dr. Bowman. She has been offered a position much, much closer to home, and was appointed to that position as Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction in the Garden City School District. So begrudgingly recommending that to the board tonight. And just want to acknowledge that tonight. We'll be acknowledging Dr. Bowman much more extensively later on in the year, but just wanted to point that out tonight. And just, Alice, thank you for the wonderful work you've done with us. Alice will be with us through the rest of the year, so this is not she won't be gone quickly. We're going to get everything out of her we can in that time. Just wanted to recognize her and thank her for her work. And I don't know if Alice wanted to say anything or if the board wanted to just briefly mention anything tonight. Yes, you first.
I just want to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the entire district, to the board, to Dr. Champ, to my colleagues in cabinet, to the entire administrative staff, to our teaching staff. You've all welcomed me with open arms and been incredibly supportive. I have learned a tremendous amount from every single one of you, and I am in awe every single day at the level of service that you provide for children. Kids are first here. Kids are in the middle. Kids are last. Everything's about the kids, which is wonderful. It is very bittersweet for me to be tendering my resignation here. I do love it here. But as Dr. Champ said, there are opportunities on the closer to the home front and wonderful opportunities for me professionally as well. And I promise that the next 4 months will be 100% service to the Pelham district and to all of our kids. So thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. We'll definitely miss you, but we're happy that you had
Thank
this
you.
opportunity. And I think we're going to be planning more opportunity for recognition down the line.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I think we can move on to the line-by-line budget review.
Okay. So yes, the main event of the evening. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah,
Should we bring up communications?
yep, move up public comment.
Yeah.
We'll open public comment if anybody's here to speak.
Hi, Stephen Chicane, 917 Washington Avenue. So just so we're all clear, because there's a lot of public statements going back and forth, an easement is off the table 100%. Is that correct?
That's, we've been clear on that, yeah.
Okay, okay. And then secondly, what you just voted on is an exploration to move forward, and by moving forward, you mean
Exploration
but exploring a sale of the property.
or transfer. I think the exact language was transfer, right?
In consideration.
Transfer of the property
In
for
consideration.
consideration.
Okay, in consideration for either cash or something,
Something
something
Something of
else.
value,
okay, and that would be subject to a vote of the community, correct? Okay.
correct.
Correct.
Okay, so that clarifies it. The other thing, the reason I came, it wasn't that one, is I'm not sure if you're aware, there was an interview posted this morning on YouTube called 914 Wired. And then it was an interview of the mayor of the village of Pelham, Chance Mullen, and it took place on Monday, so 2 days ago. And this is a direct quote from the mayor. And this is concerning to me. I have spoken, so I, meaning the mayor, have spoken to one Board of Education member recently today, which would have been Monday, and I'm optimistic that we might be able to start thinking about designs first rather than the legalities, which I think might help bring down the temperature a little bit, so I'm more optimistic than I have been the last couple of weeks. So I guess, why is one individual on the board having discussions with the mayor? Has this been authorized? And would just like to know what's going on.
I'll just say, I think multiple board members have spoken to different village trustees and the mayor, not as negotiators or not speaking on behalf of the board, but we have tried to have an open dialogue. Yeah.
Okay, because from the quote, the way the quote reads and what was said is that one person is having a discussion and there was optimism based on that individual discussion that happened, which wasn't a board discussion. I don't know if there was authorization. So that just raises concerns about what's going on. Okay, so.
Yeah, I think I can't say what the mayor's interpretation of the, discussion was, but we've, at least me, to the extent that I have any authority as president, I've just said, people are open to discuss things. And with the understanding that it's not an official position or negotiation, but trying to be open and cooperative. And I think multiple board members have spoken, informally with village trustees just to try to keep the lines of communication open. We did just authorize, to just kind of have a representative, so there may be a more formal process going forward.
Okay, just wanted to bring this to your attention in case you're unaware, because it was just put up this morning. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So it is the beginning of our line-by-line budget. I want to also thank Jim, thank Jackie Vigil, who's with us tonight, our district treasurer, and their office, who does an incredible amount of work each year to assemble the budget. But that work is really year-round work. It just culminates at this time of year. And it will continue to be an evolving document as we go, through these next couple of weeks and months towards budget adoption. Also want to thank the administrative team. I thank you for your patience tonight, too. The work that they do at the department building level to assemble this is incredible. It's very detailed, a lot of scrutiny, thought, and intentionality is put into this. So I'm going to shift over to the presentation screen to get it kicked off, and I'm going to pass it to Jim at a certain point, and we will get things rolling through details. So as we begin, and similar to what was shared with you back at our budget overview earlier this month, the budget that's being presented to the board for your consideration is a total appropriation budget of $93,400,000, which represents a budget-to-budget increase of 2.68%. The projected preliminary allowable tax levy increase, as this budget is constructed, is that 2.68%. And the tax levy increase per the preliminary budget is the 2.68. So in essence, this is a tax compliant budget that is being presented to the board with the proposed tax levy of 2.68%. When we look at the budget, sorry, our graphic got a little carried over there. There's so many different components to the budget that go into this. It's not one simple math problem, but it's really a year-long an annual look at a number of competing priorities for us as a district. So instructional goals, vision, we've talked about strategic planning, maintaining adequate reserves, thinking about what are the long-term and short-term financial forecasts, what is the property tax cap impact, et cetera, and a variety of different factors that drive the annual budget and that we have to take into account each year, and each year is unique. It presents different challenges, different opportunities. As we know this year, this was really kind of a maintenance year because we are finishing out one strategic plan. We haven't yet crafted the new strategic plan. So a year to kind of stay steady, but then not yet take that growth position, but to reserve the opportunity to do that once we've taken the opportunity to come around and design the next years. So we thought it was helpful to have this graphic to just show the variety of different competing priorities that are taken into account. Earlier in the year, we did spend time talking about the programmatic highlights and growth, and I think it's important. We're not going to go all through those again. We spent a significant amount of time on that this year because we are really wrapping up two very related strategic plans. But what I think that you'll see as we go through this, just to remind you of a few things, is we've invested heavily in the program for our students. The district traditionally is one that values rich offerings for students, values a well-rounded student experience, values enriched experiences, learning in the classroom, outside of the classroom, and activities that support students in the mental health, wellness, physical health, service, civics, all the different areas of well-rounded life. So that is something we've heavily invested on over the years. And over the last 3 prior budgets, the board will remember that the state finally fully funded our foundation aid. So that gave us the opportunity in the last 3 years to finally add in some pieces of program that we weren't able to do prior because we hadn't received that foundation aid. So as of last year, that was our final infusion of foundation aid to bring us up to where we should be, which brings us then to this year. But some of those highlights, just to remind you, some of this doesn't even begin to cover them, but just the tip of the iceberg. Where we were 5 to 10 years ago to where we are today, we've got consistent district-wide programs in the academic realm, such as Math in Focus. We've got reading and writing workshop across the grade levels, FLES from grades 2 through 5. Science 21, responsive classroom is now across all of our buildings. That's work that's happened predominantly in the last 5 years. Some of that extends longer than that, but a huge uplift and really renovation of our elementary core curriculum. International Baccalaureate at the middle school. We became, just from planting the seeds of that in the old strategic plan to being authorized and now reauthorized at the middle school level, and really deepening that work thanks to the leadership of some folks here and the teachers that have engaged and really come to embrace that approach. And then when you look at our high school, we've had incredible growth in our updated electives, increase in dual enrollment courses offered at the high school as well. So we've worked to keep that catalog fresh, current, and to provide opportunities for students to engage in college-level coursework at a greater level. On the MTSS support side, as we all know, we've increased our fleet of academic interventionists. Dr. Bowman has led work on the shift to multi-tiered systems of support and deepening that work, having building-level teams, creating a district-level team, bringing in branching minds, doing work on Tier 1 instruction, using data more and more to inform our work and to give us multiple sources of data to get a better picture of our students, and then provide the appropriate interventions. So having dedicated interventionists and training them more specifically. Continuing on into the belonging and wellness, we've increased our extracurricular activities and participation, whether that's clubs, sports, enrichment opportunities, and opportunities for students to expand outside of the school. As we mentioned earlier, we've increased our mental health staff, our clinical staff. So we've increased over the years psychologists, social workers, school counselor at the elementary level. We've increased our ENL support. All that is to provide students, meeting them where they are and giving them what they need so that they can then flourish as students. And then technology, our technology has continued to grow in just tremendous ways. Prior to the pandemic, our director of technology really had us on a strong path towards a planned refresh of Chromebooks. So we grew from a kind of sporadic grant-based approach when I first started in the district to a systematic yearly upgrade of Chromebooks to all students in grades 5 and grade 9. We have K-12 one-to-one Chromebook ratios plus additional technologies. We have interactive displays and document cameras in all rooms. We have digital fluency curriculum, K-12. We've been a leader in that area in the state. We've expanded the learning and assessment resources and software for our teachers and students, and we've had an incredibly grown and robust infrastructure that has expanded exponentially over the course as our physical plant has grown, in addition to our reliance on technology for everything from safety and security to instruction. The outcomes of that, we looked at some of those again at our work session, but significant increases in the numbers of AP exams taken by our high school students with still maintaining outstanding results. As I mentioned, more dual enrollment courses so we can increase the number of and percentage of our graduating students who have had the opportunity to take a college level course, which is one of the best preparations for success in college. Increasing students attending four-year college, increasing in our SAT scores in critical reading and math. We've been recognized, continue to be recognized regionally, state and nationally in programs like science research. We had our second presidential scholar this year. Forensics debate, arts, athletics, you name it, across the board, our students are firing on all cylinders and really demonstrating incredible levels of success and recognition. And of course, let's not forget, very proud this year, Colonial School being recognized as a blue ribbon school by the U.S. Department of Education. That doesn't happen by mistake, that happens by design. A lot of hard work, a lot of focus, and a lot of care for the whole child. So congratulations again to Rachel on that. And we are looking forward to a little advertisement. We are very excited to have the National Teacher of the Year who will be joining us at Superintendent's Conference Day on March 15th. Rachel, Dr. Bowman, and I had the opportunity to see her at a session in Washington, D.C. when we were being honored for that. We're thrilled the PEF is sponsoring her to come here. So we're really excited to kind of bring those two worlds together and hope that she is a great inspiration. We'll be sending some invites to the board to join us for that event and to the PEF as well, who's provided us with a grant to bring Rebecca in. And finally, all 6 of our schools, we haven't made a big deal about this, but it's true. All 6 of our schools were identified by U.S. News and World Report as top schools this year. That's a big deal. 6 out of 6 is a great accomplishment. Something to be proud of. And again, these things don't happen by mistake. They happen by design, and that's the culminating work of many, many years and something for us all to be proud of. As we move into money and transition into funding, these things don't come for free. But again, these come with what our community values, what are our priorities, where you put your treasure, there your heart is. It's the treasure principle, and our community has continued over and over again to invest in our schools. They treasure our students, they value the education that they get, and as such, that's where our funding has been going. So tonight we're going to go just as quickly as we can, but in depth, so that the board has the opportunity to really understand at the beginning of this line-by-line process what the budget is comprised of. We will be doing the line-by-line over 3 meetings this year instead of doing a full-day Saturday, so this is the first of 3, and you'll see tonight's focus is on predominantly the instruction, technology, and BOCES portions. So just to kick things off, we'll start with our revenue and other financing sources. This is kind of the general, we like to show the general overview of where our finances come from. So property taxes continue to be the largest proportion of our revenues, followed by state aid. As folks will remember from prior years, as our state aid has increased with the full funding of the foundation aid, that's taken a bigger portion of our revenues have come from state aid, which has been great. The state owed us that money for many years. They've been making square on that. So just under 77% of the budget revenues are coming from property taxes. Additional smaller, much smaller categories, miscellaneous receipts, appropriation of fund balance, debt service reserve, and then appropriations from a couple other reserves, ERS and TRS, which are employees' retirement system, teachers' retirement system. So we'll be going more into depth in those as we go through the presentation. And I'm going to steal Mr. Ricky back shortly. This pie chart shows you really that broken down in just a much more graphical way. So again, you can see the largest proportion is property tax, followed by the dark blue is the state aid. That piece of the pie has been getting a little bit bigger. And then you see the two other categories. I'm going to pass him this from the property tax portion over to him because he does a much better technical job of describing this. I'm the layperson, he's the technician, and he enjoys it. So I'm going to let...
Guess I'm in the right job.
Yes, Mr. Ricky shine a little bit here on this.
Thank you, Dr. Champ. Thank you, Board. And welcome to the budget season of 2024, the 24-25 budget. So again, as Dr. Champ mentioned, before us this evening, the superintendent has proposed a tax cap compliant budget. This is our 13th year with the tax cap legislation. And really what that does is everyone seems to think that the tax cap is just a 2% cap, and that's what it is. But that's really not what it is. It's a little bit more than that, and certainly 2% CPI is part of that. But as you can see here, the tax cap really limits the tax levy growth to the lesser of 2% or CPI, and there are certain adjustments that are allowable based on those adjustments provided by the Office of Real Property at New York State. So as we all have felt, certainly cost of things have been more expensive. CPI, which is inflation, for 2023 is 4.12%. So with that, we are limited to a cap of 2%. There are certain exclusions allowed under the tax cap, which are for capital expenditures. So a capital expenditure that we think of is the debt that we pay on money that we've borrowed, or if we have a capital project that we want to pay cash for. Those are things that can be taxed for outside of this 2% cap, but they're certainly still part of that tax proposal. So that's one of the allowable things, and the other one is for pension costs. If pension costs grow from year to year in excess of 2 percentage point rates in that year, you have that. This year, the ERS, the Employee Retirement System, had an allowable tax cap exclusion of 0.01%. So it was a very, very minimal amount. So that was part of the calculation in our tax cap. Now, what do we have to do? Again, all of our budgets go before the community, and with that, this is what happens when the board puts forward a tax cap compliant budget. To pass that budget, you need a simple majority, which is 50% of the voters plus one vote. If you have a tax cap, a budget that's above the tax cap, and that's not what's being proposed here, in instances like that, you need a supermajority, and a supermajority in this case is 60% of the voters plus one vote. In either instance, if no budget is approved or after 2 failed voting attempts, a district must adopt a contingency budget, and that contingency budget mandates a 0% tax levy increase. And in this instance, for the district, the impact of that would be $1.9 million impact of revenue on the budget. Now, how you address that could happen in a number of different ways. It could be addressed in expenditure reductions and/or increased appropriations of fund balance, or any combination of that, if that were to so happen. But again, those are just the types of things and how you would have to address it if you found yourself in that situation, or any district found themselves in that situation. One of our appendices, you'll see the history of the voting performance in Pelham. This community has always been very supportive of school district votes, and certainly not something any of us take for granted. And I think part of this, what we're doing now and going through this budget and a deliberate exercise over the next 3 meetings, and more than that, is really a good process to make sure that the vote and the budget that's put before the community is the right budget. So here's the tax cap calculation. If you look at the top, last year, the district taxed residents for $70,002,518. I mentioned there's a tax cap growth factor of 0.72%. And then there's certain exclusions you have to take out, which are the capital exclusions that I mentioned. And on the middle of the page, you say it equals on the left-hand side, it says equals prior year tax levy limit, 68,251,800. That's kind of what the budget was, or the taxes raised to support the non-capital portion of the budget. Now that we've normalized that, what we need to then do is add that 2% tax cap factor that we mentioned earlier. Then at that point, we can also add back in what our expected capital expenditures were going to be for the current year as part of those exclusions. So there you see the $4,428,655. This budget, there's a proposed usage of a debt service fund. We've done that the last few years. We anticipate these monies being available for the upcoming year, which is advantageous to the taxpayer. And then on the bottom, you see that small ERS pension. That's a small exclusion, which allowed for the ability to be able to tax for an additional $6,224 under the tax cap. When you run through the calculation, you come to an allowable tax levy of $71,876,715. As Dr. Champ mentioned, 2.68% year-to-year variance on the tax levy. Yes.
Just a footnote on that.
Thank you. In the small type at the bottom, and I guess this kind of relates up to what I talked about, the appropriation of the debt service, the $2,175,000. That appropriation of debt service fund is being applied so that the board and the school district doesn't tax residents more money to service debt. If those monies were not available and the district needed to raise funds for that through taxation, you would have the ability to do that with a tax cap compliant budget, and you could have an allowable tax levy upwards of 5.78%. So that's kind of what that $2.175 million buys you as far as the impact to the proposed tax on what we see right now. So I think that's it's good to see, and it's good to see that it's definitely playing an important role on the resident taxpayer.
And is that the entire debt service fund? That's
what we have right now. We had applied that this year. We don't see the need to apply those funds this year, which is favorable, obviously, because then they're available for
But that's
next
the
year.
whole balance of that fund?
Yes.
Is what's proposed?
In the upcoming year, hopefully, we're working on closing out the 2018 bond. And with those surplus dollars, which we estimate to be in the $3 million range, those dollars would flow down to the debt service fund. And should these monies be utilized, those new dollars would then help to refresh that, and they could be used for the same purpose moving forward. So what are the components of this year's tax increase? Again, as you see, the growth factor accounted for 0.72%. That CPI with the exclusions is another 1.95%, or it comes to a total of 2.67%. And then that small 0.01%, the ERS pension exclusion, brings us up to the 2.68%. So just again, another illustration to show folks where the new tax dollars are being generated and where they're dedicated to. More about budgeting the tax cap era. We have to really work hard to make sure that we manage our expenditures to keep in line with our revenues and try to reduce our reliances on fund balance and reserve appropriations. Because again, we have limited controllable revenue sources. We have property taxes, we have state aid, we have some interest income, and fund balances and reserves, which is kind of like your savings account. They can be used, but again, you want to use them strategically. So assessed valuation and non-homestead, every property throughout the district is assessed annually. And if you think about it, a homestead property is kind of like a single-family home, and a non-homestead property, think of that like a store, like a grocery store, like a DeChico's or something. That's a non-homestead property. And again, as we look at it this year, and I think we all see it, the assessed value of property has increased year to year. And what you see here is kind of a 10-year run out of the total value, the assessed valuation of total property values within the district over the years. Now, what you have here, though, is a breakdown of homestead versus non-homestead. So in the last year, And again, what we saw this year was we saw homestead property valuations were climbing a little bit faster than non-homestead properties. So that's what we've seen here. But again, it's a nice growth on both sides. But with the growth of the base factors that we talked about, with the homestead values growing a little bit faster, that means that the homestead properties are going to absorb a higher proportion of that tax, those taxable dollars of what the monies that we're trying to raise through taxation. So what would the effect of a school tax increase be for this year? And again, we kind of looked at 3 different scenarios and different areas. If you have a property that a change assessment value at 5% or 8.26%, which I'm told was the average increase of assessment year to year in the town, or 15%. And then based on a home valued at $600,000, $1.123 million or $1.475 million. And this chart, it's in the budget book, and we put it on our website. It gives folks an understanding of kind of what the impact of that annual increase will be year to year. State aid. As Dr. Champ mentioned, over the last few years, the district has really started to receive a much greater portion of state aid that we've really been underfunded for all of those previous years. And that's really been great. The district has had an opportunity to expand program and put those dollars to use. So as you see, it comes in many different factors. The biggest one that I was just talking about is foundation aid. As you see, last year it was just under $8 million. It's $7.9 million. This year we see about a $318,000 increase, which is terrific, a change of 4%. I know I spoke at previous meetings. Other districts have certainly not been as fortunate because they've formulaically they've not been entitled to as much as what they've been receiving in the past, and the governor has tried to pull some of that back. In our instance, obviously, we weren't receiving what we were entitled to, and we're getting up to where we should be. So for a long period of time, the folks of Pelham have been bearing a greater portion than what the formulas really had envisioned them to be able to do. So this was a great opportunity to get up on that level. Now, I think what we're seeing at the state is how are they going to manage that and hopefully stay at that level moving forward. The other portions that we see is, I'm sorry.
So would you say sometimes there's questions about the budget growth over the past few years?
Sure.
But would you say this is the main driver or a significant driver of the
I think
budget
so.
growth, that we actually received more money from the
Yes.
state, and the strategic decision was put it right back
Invest in the
into
program.
our education, to the incredible education that we're delivering. And we're hearing every single school recognized U.S. News, National Blue Ribbon, multiple national level recognition of students. So I think it's the right decision.
I think that's a good way to frame it, that those increased dollars have been dedicated towards the educational system. Remember, during all those years, we've still had a tax cap compliant all those years, a tax cap compliant budget all those years. So certainly, foundation aid has really made a big difference in that impact. And there's some other revenues that we can share too. I'm sorry, Will.
Jim, can I just sort
Of course.
of pick up on that and perhaps sort of frame it in a slightly different way, complementary way, I guess, which is, I think when you kind of look at the, I mentioned this in the last meeting, at the kind of increase, when you take out the one-off expenses, capital expenditures, and you kind of look at the increase in operating expenses year over year, I think we're looking at about a 5%-ish increase in what I would call operating expenses, but we're only increasing taxes by 2.68%. So would it be fair to say that when you look at the mix of our revenue sources over time, we're becoming sort of increasingly dependent to some extent upon state aid and also interest income that's been another sort of windfall over the last couple of years?
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
I think that's completely fair to say.
Okay. And I guess this is, I don't know if this is the right place to ask this question, but I'm going to anyway. There are some perhaps concerning trends evolving over state aid, and who knows what will happen to interest income. That's completely out of our control. Obviously, your job is you're paid to worry. I worry too, I'm just not paid for it. But if we saw those revenue lines, state aid and interest income decrease materially, that would be a problem, right? And how do you think about that? What would our approach be?
Well, I think that requires a lot of thought and conversation. It would require, there's a couple of different ways you can approach it. Again, you can hold your expenditures and then try to determine how you want to maintain paying for those expenditures. You could look at ways to reduce your expenditures and program. I don't think anything, we're in a fortunate position. I mean, we have a solid fund balance. So I think in some respects, you have the benefit of some time to be able to be deliberate and make good decisions, and not have to make very fast decisions. But you would have to consider different ways to do. Would you then consider reducing program or reducing expenditures in different ways, or looking for other revenue sources, or tapping a higher taxation? Yeah. There's a couple of different ways you could look at it.
Well, just as we go through this kind of budget process, in the back of my mind, I guess what I'm going to be thinking is, again, the sort of percentage of our revenues that come from sources over which we have little control has increased over time. And I think that's just, potentially a reason to be very mindful of our expenses growth.
Absolutely. Again, I agree, and we love diversification, but then with that comes the concern that you've just mentioned. I agree. So the other state funds that we talk about are our building aid, and our building aid is used to help pay for our capital expenses that we talked about before. And as you look at if you were to go back to the tax cap formula, you would see there's a portion there where we account for building aid. Then we have BOCES aid. BOCES is it's another educational program, really school, that we're a part of for cooperative services. And the real benefit of using the BOCES programs are that we're incentivized by the state in receiving aid based on some of our expenditures, BOCES expenditures in the following year. So if we spend, let's just use a simple example, we spend $100 today on a BOCES program. Next year, we may get $48 back from that on BOCES, depending on what the program is. So as we look at our different revenue sources and how we spend dollars, those are some deliberate decisions we made over the years. And we've looked at changing some of our spending patterns in BOCES over the years because of that, for that specific reason. We also receive some aid for transportation. We're not a busing district, but we do transport students outside the district, and we'll have an evening to discuss transportation. So we are the benefactors of some transportation aid, and then smaller amounts for instructional materials, high tax aid, which has been a flat number as long as I can remember it, and some other smaller aid items. But the total amount, as you can see, is $13.3 million, which is a nice part of our budget. As you can see, the percent change year to year is 4.45%. We have different miscellaneous receipts. We talked about interest earnings, which is near the bottom, but at the top here we have sales tax. So we're the recipients of a portion of sales tax that are collected by the county that are dedicated to the schools, which is terrific. That number has grown nicely over the last few years, especially after the state permitted the county to enact legislation for school districts to receive a greater amount of sales tax. So we see that number has grown to over $1 million. We receive some monies for tuition for students who, we have some staff members who bring their students to our schools. For that, they pay tuition. There are a limited number of folks in certain circumstances who may have moved out of town who are permitted to stay in the school system. They'll pay tuition. And then in other instances, we have special education students. If we have capacity available in a specialized special education class, where we'll receive students from other school districts and be able to provide that system. Kind of like if we've got excess capacity, we're able to raise some money off of that. And on this evening's budget, or on this evening's agenda later tonight, you'll see the rates are set every year by the state, and there's an agenda item to adjust those rates. Interest earnings has been a great number. Just a few years ago, It was barely nothing. This year, we anticipate earning over $1 million in interest income during the development of this budget. There's a lot of talk about interest rate reductions in the upcoming future. Then there was some less than good news, I guess, economically, and then there was some discussion about holding the rates a little bit higher. But I think collectively we know that the overwhelming consensus is that those rates are going to come down, and the desire is to bring those rates down over the next few years to a lower level. And then we have other miscellaneous receipts like utility payments, payments from the town, rental charges if people rent our facilities, if we auction something off, proceeds from auctions of surplus items. So again, that just makes up, again, it's about a 15% change year to year, as you can see. Sales tax, $1.35 million, almost closing in on $1 million in tuition. Prior year expenditures includes arts and ed, and also I mentioned we're part of BOCES, and if BOCES can't run a profit, so if BOCES runs a profit, they have to kick it back to their member districts, of which we're one of them. So every year we'll receive a portion of that. And then interest incomes, as you can see that last year we added $800,000. We're at 1.1 in this particular budget. And then under other funding sources, which is our fund balance or reserve funds. And you really want to think of that kind of as like as your savings account. It's not a renewable dollar. So again, New York State recommends districts create reserve funds for long-term liabilities, which we do have, like for our tax certiorari reserve. Or we also have reserves for our retirement system. So when that changes, and we're going to be proposing drawing down some of those funds this year for retirement fund payments. And the goal is to maintain reserves against liabilities and support the budget appropriately through the planned utilization of reserves. So a smart utilization of reserves over time. This budget, this is the breakdown of the utilization, the proposed utilization of that. As you can see, it's about $1.2 million from prior year carry forward. I just mentioned about $800,000 from the ERS pension reserve. Then we have the TRS, which is the Teachers Retirement System Reserve. And that debt service fund keeps coming back again, that $2.175 million for a total of $4.385 million. Which, and again, that makes up about 4.7% of the budget. That's the revenue part. I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question about
Yes.
The capital reserve dedicated for Glover Field?
Mm-hmm.
If we, because there was some discussion in the facilities committee that Glover Field is still in good condition, but approaching
Yes.
kind of the end of life and may need to be replaced at some point. And we have that dedicated fund
We
for
do.
that.
Yes.
If we were to put that, do you know the timing, if we need to make a decision?
Yes, I can. So we had a facilities committee meeting yesterday. One of the items discussed was
It feels like weeks ago, it was only yesterday.
It was yesterday morning, right?
Right.
I know.
That was like three meetings ago, okay,
It was yesterday morning, right?
probably
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So the Glover Field, the original Glover Field for the football field, I believe was installed about in 2013. So we're at about year 11 of utilization of that field. Turf fields, you can generally expect to get between 12 and 15 years of use. What we find is that the field's in good condition. We maintain it. When we have rips or cuts, we do a nice job in mending the seams and taking care of it. But the field isn't going to last forever. As was mentioned, some years ago, the district created a capital reserve for fields and for the purpose of replacing, as I understand it, for replacing Glover Field for the next grass field or the turf field when it goes down. So to be able to do that, to utilize those funds, the board would need to create an authorization for a ballot item. It would be a separate ballot item in the budget. It would need to be approved probably at the next board meeting of March 20th. And you would before that, sequentially, you'd have to do a SECRA resolution that it doesn't have an impact, a type 2 impact. And that's obviously because the field is already there. It's a remove and replace type of a project. And that would give us the time to start the process of removing and replacing that field so that we're not in a position where the field starts to fail and then we're kind of working from behind. This gives us an opportunity to be a little bit proactive and getting that field replaced really before it gets into a condition that we're not really proud of or that we feel rushed into doing.
And Jim, to be clear, what impact, if any, would that have on the actual budget?
I didn't mention that, thank you.
The tax
So,
cap, yeah.
since it comes out of the capital reserve and it's a separate ballot item, it would have a zero impact. It's a separate account that we have. The only way you can spend that money is by a public vote, and unless the vote is voted in the affirmative, the money stays there until the public votes to release those funds. So that's kind of the particular of having that capital reserve.
Okay, and you said March 20th
March 20th, yeah.
would be the deadline. Okay,
We
so-
talked a little bit about facilities, trying to schedule a couple of finance committees in that time period too, and I think that's part of our discussion as well, to be able to bring it back to the full board. So what I just discussed was the revenue. That's kind of the boring part of the budget, a lot of people would think. Now, what's the exciting part? What are we going to spend our money on? And again, this is the big sheet that you see. There's no surprise. Most of the dollars are spent on salaries and benefits. Education is a people business, and that's where those dollars are spent. So we can go down each one of these. Again, as you see, what the adopted budget was last year, the variance from year to year in dollars and percentage, and a percentage of the total expense budget that's being presented here. If you look at it in the pie chart, which really isn't a surprise, again, most of that is taken up by instruction and general support, a small portion of debt service, and that other portion on the left that you see there is employee benefits, which again, that really relates back to the people who are doing the instruction. Another look at it is as we look at it in salaries on the right-hand side in blue, that makes up about a little bit more than half of it, and then employee benefits is that bottom left corner or quadrant that you see there. And the other, that other quadrant there then that you see is textbooks, debt service, supplies and tuitions and BOCES expenditures. And this is something that's just required by state law as we look at our budgets in the three component categories. Of instructional programs make up just shy of 75% of our budget, 74.9%. Capital, it makes up 16% of the budget. And the administrative component of the budget is 9.1%. We say it every year, by state law, that cannot exceed 10%. So again, we fall beneath that and are compliant with state law. So as you look at the larger categories, budget to budget, what's driving the change, as you can see, salary and benefits is driving a significant portion of the budget year to year. That $3.4 million. With special education, district needs driving about $500,000. Transportation, $300,000. And as we look at our budget year to year, last year we had a $2 million capital expenditure for the HVAC replacements, which are still working on in this building and place at Colonial. So that's not in, that $2 million is not in this budget. And then we have all other smaller changes. So again, the year to year change is just $2.4 million or 2.68%. If you were to take out, again, that capital, and do an apples to apples, you're looking at $4.4 million. I kind of like this chart. This is the stuff that it's good for finance people. What this really does is it gives you an understanding kind of what the changes are in the budget. On the left-hand side, again, shows you the variances in the revenue year to year. And on the right, it kind of shows you what the expenditure variances are year to year. And as you flow down to the bottom of the page, you can see the total increase in revenues year to year is $2.4 million, and the revenue and the expenditures is $2.4 million. Of course, there's a lot of detail behind that. That's part of the line by line. But again, this is just to give an understanding of where those numbers are changing from year to year. So again, the budget at a glance, $93.4 million. It is a coincidence, 2.68, 2.68, and 2.68%. And again, I think every year we've worked on the budget. There's always been changes. Things do change. interest income can change depending on what we hear about happening in the economy. We can have more tuition students. A district can approach Pelham and say, are you able to take another special education student? We can make those modifications. We may have someone move into the district or someone in the district who now requires different needs. And it may be a more costly or less costly program. And what we're going to do is we're going to track those changes as we work through the process. And we've done that every year. And that's part of the process of going through the budget cycle. So we got a number of meetings. Obviously, we've got, I think, 3 line-by-line meetings, and then a budget adoption meeting after that, public hearing, and then the final budget vote, I believe, is May 21st.
And you've always had really an open door policy for board members who have questions, especially for the new board members, if you want to go over anything.
Thank you for mentioning that. Absolutely. We'll go over line by line. Happy to do that. We're trying to schedule meetings with our finance committee because I think there's going to be questions that are coming out of the budget. Certainly, board members can ask the finance committee members. The board members can ask us directly. We'll give you the answers that you're looking for. We'll give you that information. All right.
Thank you.
There.
So I think now we transition to the actual line by line itself, if there's no more questions on the overview at this point. Okay. And I believe that is Dr. Bowman to kick things off. If you can give us page number and.
Yep, sorry. If everyone could start on page C9. Okay, so the first line is our 2010-145 line, which includes salaries. And again, the budget increase here reflects recent historical experiences. It is a limited increase due to some increases in our need for professional development around new courses in the high school, as well as our Seal of Civic Readiness proposals and updates in our literacy development. When we move to the next code, which is the 419 code, you'll see that there's an increase there, which is indicative of the addition of our, that's where we pay out for our responsive classroom, sorry for that, and also where we added the cultural competency consultant cost as well. Okay.
And Dr. Bowman, just one reminder, what was I going to ask? And the curriculum and instruction, sorry, I had a question for you just a moment ago. Can you remind me what did you just mention under the first code? I'm sorry, there was a 419.
There was
Never mind, I got it, sorry, it's late. Could you just remind us the status of the Seal of Civic Readiness? I believe we're looking to pilot that at the high school next year.
We are piloting it this year in the high school with our AP government students,
Right, okay. Thank you.
and we're looking to expand, yeah.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to get at. Apologize for the.
No problem. Next page, C10. Again, the first portion with the 150 line is salaries. We have both my office as well as building administrators, and those are based upon contractual agreements. We have our salaries for 160, our clerical assistants, and those are those expenditures are based on staffing vacancies that we have as well. And then again, if you look at 165, we have reduced that based on our recent historical experience to not have been able to fill those roles. Once we get past that, when we get to the 400 line, we are going to be looking at some overall building budgets, and you'll see as I move forward that there those formulas are based on a per pupil expenditure, as well as need factors that include free and reduced lunch, students with disabilities, and our E&L students. And some of those items have shifted within the budgets of the buildings, and I'll go through them with you a little bit further. So for starters, you'll see in the 450 lines for each of the buildings, these supplies and materials are based upon running our offices. So these are non-instructional materials. And so you'll see some reductions in that aspect. And those will be offset a little bit later when we move to page C13. So just kind of put a pin in that, and you'll see where that has been appropriated for next year's budget. Moving on to page C11. Our teachers' conferences and workshops, the 400 code has remained static for next year. When you move on to the 2070 codes, you're going to see that that's where we have some of our instructional salaries for our professional developers, as well as conferences and workshops and curriculum coaches. Okay. Moving on to page C12. This is, coming up in the next meeting, we'll go into more depth about our salaries, and so this is really where a lot of that lives for our instructional staff. But you'll see teacher salaries for our 120 code and our 130 code. These preliminary budgetary expenses do include step increases, but the collective bargaining units are currently under negotiation, so those will be reflected later on. When we get to stipends, if you want to take a look at Appendix 4, it goes into much more depth. Particularly, what we're looking at here is how we include additional funds for extra duty assignments based on needs that we have. So when we have teachers who have overages, that's where that comes from. Underneath that, we have 133, which is mandated home instruction. Just to be clear, this is our hourly in-house home instruction that occurs, not with contractual agencies that are outside coming in, but this is for our own employees. Again, daily substitute teacher salaries, that's not only for when you have a daily sub, but if you have a teacher who takes a class as a coverage for a day, so that we have, mostly that's on the secondary level, if you take a period, coverage of a colleague. Salaries for our clerical assistants is 160, and that's for our attendance officers. Lunch program supervision, we are adjusting that back to the actual expenses that occurred in the 2022-2023 year. And clerical substitutes, again, those increases, this budget reflects increased recent historical expenses, so we're just making that quick adjustment there. We move on to expenses in equipment, and
I'm sorry, I'll jump in a little bit on the lunch program. You do see an increase there. We did have a surplus in that lunch fund that we had to draw down. So we were in the process of drawing that down. We've moved that down to the level that is now acceptable. So with that, we're returning to the more historical levels that we've budgeted for year to year. So as you look at it, that's why you see that variance year to year.
Also, this is where you have contingency positions in the budget, teaching positions, or?
So as we built the budget, as we do every year, we built 2 contingent positions in place. And again, we're going to spend a whole day on staffing, but our whole meeting on staffing. But as we look at, say, this year's budget, we built it with 2 contingent positions.
Right. And we use
Based
them.
on enrollment, we ended up using those positions. This year's budget, again, based on enrollment, includes those positions.
Okay.
So now we add 2 more contingent positions on top of that,
Okay.
because those contingent positions were used
Based on enrollment,
based on enrollment.
Yeah.
which impacts class sizes and.
Yes, yep.
okay. Moving along to equipment, the next line, the 2010-200 line is where we are, that's the fund that is used to fund our flexible furniture expenditures over year. And you'll see that we are slowing the pace of this phase funding to reflect the individuality of each of the classrooms in each of the schools, and to make sure that we're incorporating some of the individual opportunities that each classroom provides, and some of the different styles that teachers are looking to incorporate, so that they can have their space reflect the needs and also the structure of the rooms in which they're teaching.
So
Okay.
that's sort of based on lessons learned, I guess, and.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
absolutely.
So actually, sounds like being very thoughtful and using the money.
Yes.
In the most effective way.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Moving to C13, the first line here, which is the 2010-400 code, district-wide contractual. The increase there you'll see is due to the increased number of residency investigations that have been taking place, and the anticipation that that increase will continue. It's, that's what's there.
And the tent for graduation.
Oh, sorry, and the tents, but the tents got more expensive?
We put it here.
All right, so the tents got moved there.
Residency.
Okay. Next, moving down, you'll see this is also part of where the individual buildings' budgets come in, and here's where we're talking about contractual areas, so things like professional development, conferences, memberships and subscriptions. And you'll see that there are some changes, but it's really just, like I said earlier, where we were decreasing here, we're increasing, and it's important to note when we get down to materials and supplies. These materials, supplies are instructional, and so the reduction in the costs for running our administration, so the offices, has been reallocated so that it's more closely aligned with instruction. But moving up a little bit, sorry, I'm going a little out of order. We, as Dr. Champ mentioned earlier, are still continuing to be part of the IB in the middle school years, and so that's in the 401 code. The 406 code is, again, regional association membership dues, curriculum councils, tri-states, those sorts of organizations with which we take part. Underneath, you have our intern support program. Each year, we have in the past budgeted for 10 interns. We've had a hard time finding 10 interns over the last few years, and so we've adjusted. This will be the second year that we've adjusted to budget for 8 interns. You'll see that again in a different portion of the budget, but the part of that I want to make sure is clear is that this is the portion of the budget that is spent with our partnership with the universities. So portion of the internship budget is for the university's partnership, and a portion of it is to, goes to the students themselves, the interns. And so this part is the part that you would see that goes towards the partnership with the schools.
So we budget for 8. Do we have 8 this?
Uh,
No.
We haven't
You-
increased aid in half a decade,
Okay,
and that's the economy.
yes.
And also the fact that the number of actual people going to teaching has dropped tremendously.
Yeah.
And also competition with other school districts who have similar programs. So you compound that all, I haven't seen 8 interns since I started here.
Yeah.
You haven't seen what?
I haven't seen 8 interns in this district since I started here. It's very hard to find them. There's great competition for that. But when we do find them, they do a great job for us.
Yeah.
And you said the first factor was the economy,
Yep.
because are they required to
Because
do
they're
an
all finding
internship?
jobs as teachers.
So you don't have to do an internship, you
Nope.
could just
You-
go straight
you can-
in
they-
to be a
A lot of them
teacher?
been sucked up back into the teaching ranks.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
there are
Well, that makes
student-teacher
sense.
requirements, but
Uh-huh.
that's different than this
An
internship program.
I
Because
see.
there's money paid towards tuition and money, stipend
Okay.
paid towards the
So
student.
student teacher is still in school,
Yes. all
and an
teachers-
intern has graduated.
I'd have that.
Or-
They're pre-service, but some of them do get certifications
Right.
along the way. Some of them are multiple certifications, because sometimes they get an elementary certification, and then they move on to try to get a second certification, and we can suck them into that internship role. And we've had a great partnership with Iona over the years, but we also expanded to other school districts. But there is, let's just say that other school districts have kind of caught on to that gig. So it's very hard to find them. And then through COVID, as you know, the fact that there was such a lack of substitute teachers, districts just brought them in. So districts trying to recover from that. And programs, because it's not, unfortunately, the education field hasn't been as popular with a lot of college graduates.
Right. So, but if we've had success with the intern program and there are all these new challenges from a strategic perspective, what could we be doing to become more attractive?
You can pay them more.
Okay, how much?
I'm not sure. I haven't really done that research. Something if the
Seems
district
if-
wants to explore that, we can increase that to the budget, but.
I mean, it seems relative to a 90, 93. If you're saying that these could be really great levers to create a new pipeline of talent, seems worthy of
If that's what the
investment.
board's wishes is, then that's something that the district should pursue.
It's well worth some research. I don't know if that's come back to the next meeting or come back for this line item, but that would be of interest.
Are you looking to understand what other districts may be paying comparative?
All of it.
Is that the,
Yeah, I mean, if other districts, you just said have caught on, have they caught on, in what ways, and who's the most successful, and how do we become the most successful?
and part of me wonders if they're having any more success than we are or not.
Well,
They've caught on to the idea, for sure. I think Steve's point of supply, I think, is one of our biggest issues.
For
But
sure.
we could certainly
I know.
do some work on rates and
Yeah.
success. I think one of the other things that we'll need to think about, and I'm sure we'll get to it as the conversation evolves, is, there's lots of different ways that we can support kids. This certainly is one that is very cost-effective, gives the person, an opportunity that I think is a stronger preparation than your typical student teaching. But there are a variety of different ways that we can support kids. So I think that's maybe another piece of the conversation is and this is where, the expertise of the administrators is really important. What is the best approach to that?
Right. I mean, just in general, I mean, we have strategy on our brains, so what's the big idea for creating a more vibrant pipeline of talent into the district? That we'd love to brainstorm
Okay.
the answer to that question.
Okay.
And that may be part of the strategic plan discussion too,
Yeah.
because
That
we had
could definitely
said
too.
possibly staffing or something like that is one of the pillars of the strategic plan.
Yeah. Okay, so we can take a look into some research on internship rates in other districts.
Sure.
Thanks, Steve.
Moving along to page C14. District-wide materials and supplies in our 456 code has remained flat for budget year over year, as has our tuition for charter schools. What we set aside, we've got one historically, I think, charter school student paying tuition, for whom we budgeted tuition. In our textbook code, you'll notice that any changes here are supported in our materials and supplies code, and this is just, again, some of the reallocation of our buildings' budgetary codes. Okay, and so next, we're gonna move to page C23. Where we'll talk about our library and AV equipment. The first portion, which is the 131 code, 150 code, and 165 code, those are all salaries for our library and AV staff. At the top, we have our TAs who support our elementary libraries, and the AV specialist in the secondary, who really does service K-12 though. We have our librarians under there, that's the teacher staff, and then support staff and subs who cover for those folks listed earlier in the section. When we get to the materials and supplies, you'll see that they largely remain the same, with one exception, which is the middle school, where we are budgeting to have 10 power towers, which you'll see right here, so that the students can make sure that their devices are fully charged when they come to the library, because sometimes middle school students forget to charge their devices.
I've heard a lot about that, actually.
Yep. Otherwise, everything on this page seems relatively stable from year to year. And then where we're going to move next is appendix, oh, nope. H3 to H5 is where you'll see a little bit more detail for that. So it's in, where did I end up, Jackie?
Appendix 4.
Nope. Yes, Appendix 4, sorry, page H3 and H5. And that's where you'll see, over in here, there are our stipends, and that's if you want to look to see the stipends in greater depth. It's a rollover year to year, so there's nothing new to see. You're welcome to take a look.
Amounts are based on collective bargaining agreement.
Right. Which is under negotiation.
So those numbers could change.
They could, yes.
Right.
So this is for clubs that we're talking about?
Yeah, these are,
Not for athletic?
That's right.
And I would say, I know that Dr. Garcia works with the union on a fairly regular basis to make adjustments to these. As clubs come into and out of favor and are subscribed or undersubscribed more than once, I know he's come together and made some
Usually what we
updates.
do is that if something is not popular, it may not be filled, right? We may not fill it. If you want to remove a club or activity, that has to be collectively bargained. So sometimes we just don't fill them, and again, it's based on student interest and it's negotiated by the stipend. We try to keep it as even as possible, so if there's a similar club or activity, you want the stipend to be at a similar level. But we haven't, this year, I don't believe we've added anything.
No, but it's been at least twice, I think, that I remember in
Yeah,
prior years.
a couple prior years.
Some updates.
And that's everything for me.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda,
Instructional technology, John Sabalos.
digital technology.
He's got some technology. It's like if I didn't have numbers in my report. Exactly.
Is that okay? Do you need that in full screen? It's up to you. I'm good. Is everyone okay seeing that screen? All right.
Yes.
Just because it's easier, I have some notes on here for myself as well, so it just makes it a little easier for me, so let's make sure that. All right, great. I know you got to talk into this, right? I'm in a good start. All right, excellent. So I just want to thank everyone this evening for allowing me to present our budget for this year. So with our overview for tonight, I just want to start with a quick quote from George Kiros. I think it helps set the tone for what we're trying to do with technology within Pelham for the next year. What I care about is that kids are inspired to be better people because of their experiences in school. I think that's a really important thing to have in mind as you start to go forward into the next school year. because everything we do here in technology is not just about technology, it's about what we're doing for our students here in Pelham. And I think that's the core foundation of everything that we're doing here day to day in our schools. This is going to be a brief overview of everything we're going to go over for tonight, so that way you can get an idea of how we're going to move along. So let's start with the technology profile, and I think this is really interesting. This is the profile going back to right before COVID for 2019 and 20. If you take a look, this is a rough idea of what it looked like in terms of users, scanners and copiers, printers, and so forth. I think it's always interesting to go back to this slide, and then we take a look at the profile for where we are this year and how much it's actually expanded. So it just gives you a little bit of a narrative, so that way you can see how much technology has grown, not just in terms of the actual stuff, but what's also not on here is how much software we're actually providing, not just for teaching and learning, but for day-to-day operations. We're going to talk a little bit about that as we get further along, but I do think this is a really interesting comparison when you go between the two slides. Obviously, the things in yellow are things that are highlighted and where we've really increased because of everyone's support and the community support last year. What we were able to do was we gave every instructional staff member in the district an actual laptop like I'm using today. So at the elementary school, we actually got rid of physical desktops in classrooms. So that way teachers have mobile devices, so that way they can go around, they can plug in, it's a little easier to use, and it mimics the exact same setting that we have had at the secondary campus, both here in the middle school and high school for a couple years.
John, what's a dock camera?
The dock cameras are these. So these IPVO cameras, and I hope I don't trigger a couple people, but we actually use these during COVID as the cameras in the room. So not only are they a document camera, but they can actually like film within the room as well. Microphones built into it, and it plugs into a USB. But its instructional purpose is actually used to put like actual worksheets underneath, like on the podium, so that way you can actually scan and write, and it displays on the screen. So this is just an overview of everything we have in Pelham and how it works out, and it goes back to those IPVO docking displays. We have wirelessly casting on all of our interactive displays. All of our instructional staff and administrators have a dedicated mobile device. We're in a true one-to-one setting in 6 through 12, and we have dedicated carts in our K through 5, along with 5 iPads for dedicated to each K1 classroom, and we have an extensive suite of instructional technology programs. So how we make this work, probably one of the most important things that, with the support of our board, was having a dedicated K through 12 instructional technology specialist with Alicia Del Mastro. I thank the board and our administration and our teachers for the support in that position. It's probably been one of the most vital positions we had since COVID in terms of being able to support our teachers with the proper use of technology within all of our classrooms. We have a consistent refresh cycle for our 5th and 9th graders, so that way they're getting a new device every 4 years. We have a dedicated junior network technician that's new to us for this year, approved from last year's budget, that actually manages the entire one-to-one program on the secondary campus. That's been a really nice change for us because along with managing that one-to-one program, we're able to do a lot of our repairs in-house as well. And we also have a lot of ongoing PD, day-to-day maintenance of our software, a lot of help from the Lyric. They're a fantastic partner for us as a district and within the region, so we rely on them a lot. And also, if you're a parent here in the district, we also have that parent-student help desk, which has really been nice for our community as well. Again, everything's centered around our Pelham technology goals. While this help drives everything that we do within Pelham, it's supposed to be a support to our strategic plan and anything that we're trying to do when it comes to teaching and learning. Obviously, we broke these down, and you saw these last year as well, into 3 main topics of curriculum instruction: digital citizenship and fluency, and data privacy and security. I think those are 3 pretty, big goals that we're going to start to look at where we are at the end of this year, so that way when we start to build a new plan for 25 through 28, we're going to have a good idea of where we are. So these are some of our major projects that we've been able to accomplish this year. And the first 3 I'm going to draw attention to are cybersecurity, our data viz with Infinite Campus, and Branching Minds. So when it comes to cybersecurity, one of the things we've been able to do starting last year and continuing into this year are our phishing campaigns with all of our staff. So if if at work, I think a lot of people get these out. It's helped to, educate our staff to make sure that, you're reading before you click and so forth. And we establish multi-factor authentication on the first day of school for all instructional staff. So you have to have MFA turned on if you're accessing any of our Google Suite products. Data Viz is brand new to the district. Again, if you're not familiar, and I think the board has actually seen a little bit of that, it's just Tableau that sits on top of Infinite Campus and our implementation of Branching Minds. One of the bigger ones that we did this year was our transition to Parent Square. And the nice thing about Parent Square for us as a district is that it was able to take, I would say, 3 different products and put it into one. So that way we're able to streamline our communications. I know Alex has been working on that communications audit, and that was one of the suggestions. And I think this has been a home run for not just the district, but for the community as well. We have a brand new security office here at the high school, and a lot of these are just repeated from last year. Still staying compliant with New York State Ed Law 2D, our computer science and digital fluency standards work. We're still continuing our Digital Citizenship Month. And this year, one of the biggest projects that we were able to accomplish in November is our WAN upgrade through the Lyric. So I draw attention to this because if you've heard me a couple years ago, I talked about having a redundant internet line that we established at Hutchinson. Every 5 years through the Lyric, we actually go up to bid for something called WAN, or Wide Area Network, so like how everything's interconnected in Pelham. What we were able to do as of last year was because the Lyric goes out to bid for this for us, we had a change in vendor, and that allowed us to actually change our entire topography within Pelham to enhance it and make it more redundant. So instead of a traditional hub and spoke, we were able to migrate to what's called a hybrid mesh, and we were live as of November 2023. We were also able to save the district about $3,000 a year by making this transition in vendor, and I wanted you to be able to see this, and I try to use like really simple shapes and colors so that way it's easy without exposing all of our, our vital information. But you could see, like, if you take a look at the 2 internets, the one on the left would be Rockland BOCES, the one on the right would be 450 over in Mamaroneck, and the blue is the high school, middle school campus, and it goes to all 4 buildings. And that backup at Rockland over here on the top left is a backup internet connection in case the main one goes down. But what we were able to do with that new bid was we were able to create more direct connections, so that way we can also run backup not just from Hutch, but from all of our other buildings back to the high school as well. So it's been able to create a little bit more of a mesh network for us, which is really nice. So with technology growing, again, we've talked about the role of a data privacy officer a couple years ago. But it's interesting because when we talk about technology growing, it's not just the day-to-day stuff of what we're seeing in terms of teaching and learning. There's a lot of transitions within business and facilities that have gone from analog to digital. We're talking about Verizon going from copper lines to fiber optic now, emergency 911 that's existing over our VoIP infrastructure, cameras that are going from analog to digital, HVAC that has server requirements and online capability, and the same thing with our Xerox machines as well. And when we look at the teaching and learning, and I'm talking about like just with the community, think about all of the parents we've just onboarded over the past year and a half for our K-5 report cards and the parent portal. So you're looking at an additional 1,900 users that we're beginning to support, our implementation of Parent Square, and our Chromebook program. So those are just things I wanted you to have an idea of when we talk about technology that's growing. And this is what the organizational chart actually looks like within our department. And I think it's important for you to see this as we talk about the budget, because this is what sort of makes everything work in Pelham. So you could see, this is if you look on the very left in the green, those are all of our Lyric employees. So that's how we divvy up our work. And then everything else in blue underneath are direct reports and our Pelham employees. And our library media specialists, they work with us in terms of the instructional technology, digital literacies, and so forth. Again, we belong to something called Lyric Managed IT. It's been a home run for us, I feel, as a district. I know there's about 13 to 15 component districts that also belong to this as well. So the more districts that come on, the cheaper the service essentially becomes. But a lot of our incidents, we've seen about 65% can be resolved remotely. So when you hear teachers, and I always tell parents, put them in the help desk, because it doesn't necessarily require someone physically to come to you. A lot of this stuff can be resolved remotely. So it's been a really great benefit to the district. This is just and this is interesting. So this is March 1st of last year. And if you take a look at the chart on the left is how many incidents were opened and how many incidents were resolved at that point. So we're looking at 2,200 and 2,100. As of today, that number is 2,600 opened and 2,500 resolved. So why is that increase like even more? So if you heard me talk about it, we've onboarded more parents into our K-5 report card, our new Meet the Teacher program that we're using at the high school, and so forth. Anything that you can think of that we're expanding on, it's always going to require more resources. So that's why you're seeing that. But the nice thing about it is that our resolution time has been the same. It's usually within a day in terms of acknowledgement and 48 hours to closure. So we have pretty good resolution time within the district. Some highlights for you, so that way you can see it as we are, because we're about to get into our line by line. The continuation of Alicia's position in the district is a big thing for us. Our continued refresh of the one-to-one program. When I talk about cybersecurity, just continuing with what we're doing with our phishing campaign, we're going to be looking at some pen testing as well for the district. One of the bigger projects that we're going to be starting this spring, but going full bore into the summer, is called virtual server hosting. So we actually have a virtual server here that hosts our print server, all of our file management. We're going to be moving over to the Lyric to actually host all of our server components, so that way they do redundant backups, all the security and stuff like that. So that way there's not a physical box sitting here in Pelham. It will be hosted over at 450, so they'll be able to do a lot of that for us. We're going to be looking at different digital signage solutions here for the secondary campus. So when you walk into the high school and you see like the TVs, we're going to look at a different solution in terms of being able to broadcast messaging throughout the school. We're going to continue our work within computer science and digital fluency. Our parent help desk is still going to continue. We're going to evaluate and look to continue shifts from the Lyric and other BOCES and our continued support of Ed Law 2D and data privacy. This is a great chart because this actually takes me through my career in Pelham from when I actually started to about now. So if you take a look, what I did was so if you look at 18-19 and that first number of 73 million, that's the overall budget. The next column next to it, that 1.8, is how much technology was, and that accounted for about 2.5% of the budget at that time. As you see, as we've grown, obviously technology has grown up, but we've only gone up to 3.13% of the overall spend in our budget. So we've been fiscally responsible with what we're doing here in Pelham, especially within technology, and you see how much we've grown. It takes a lot of pride for us, and it's something that I think the community should take a lot of pride in as well, because I think we're providing excellent services for the value that we're bringing here. So as we go into our line by line, I just wanted you to take a look. So this chart, and I used the same one last year, but it's really important because we always have to start with our why, and teaching and learning is always the core to technology. Technology is not the core to teaching and learning. So when you look at that, and when we're trying to look at our technology goals and the strategic plan, that's how we were able to develop all of our different line items and where we're looking to go. Just to let you know, outside of the bigger projects, there's nothing that's going to be really, changing or dramatic in terms of what we're looking to do. But let's go into our line by line, so that way we can actually take a look. So if you go into your budget books, it's actually going to be where Dr. Bowman left off. It's going to be on page C24. So I apologize as I'm pulling mine up over here as well. Are we good to go? Yep. Okay, great. So for C24, the first two, 150 and 160, those are mine and my support staff salaries. So that's Janet Egan and Jim Baker. So that's for the three of us. In 220, that is computer hardware. So what do we mean by computer hardware? And we're going to talk about this when we get to the BOCES RFS. If we need to make a direct purchase from the district for like larger items such as desktops, laptops, interactive displays, if we need something at like really, really quickly, we have the ability to do that. So that's why we actually have that budget line item in here. We try to purchase as much as we can through BOCES. And if you heard Mr. Ricky talk about it before, we try to do that so that way we can get the state aid on the back end and the support from them as well. Not that BOCES wouldn't support it if we buy it directly, but with the BOCES purchasing, there's extended licensing and stuff like that and warranties that they're able to provide for us when we go that route.
I know that a lot of hardware is being bought through BOCES, so it may be hard for you to know, but like how are sort of hardware costs in general, now that COVID supply chain issues are behind us, chip shortage behind us, is hardware becoming more affordable? Or?
Hardware is It's funny because certain things have gone really up and certain things have gone really down. So let's take, for example, when we look at like switching, UPSs and so forth. Those prices have actually gone up. So have the cost of wireless access points, just because those are a different type of chip that goes into there. So those costs have actually gone up and have stayed up. I haven't necessarily seen them come down enough to be like they're going down. What we have seen come down is the actual cost of laptops, desktops, and Chromebooks especially. Some of them because of they were able to put like a cheaper processor in it. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting less quality, but they were able to mass produce those types of processors a little bit easier. So that's where I'm seeing it. So if you're looking at it in terms of the overall picture, I would say it's net neutral. But that's what I'm thinking. So let's look at numbers 400 and 420. 400 is for maintenance, support, and expansion. So if you take a look, there's a little bubble in there for estimated expenditures for this year. We're going to be looking to do a switch replacement project. So that's why that number is a little inflated for this year. But that number is going to, what we're actually requesting is going to be fairly flat. And for number 420, when you look at staff development, that's just to continue our summer curriculum writing and other PD that we do over the summer. So a lot of it was focused around computer science and digital fluency for the last couple of years. And for last summer, what we were able to do is do some Google training for our teachers and stuff like that, Go Guardian, and so forth. 450 is called materials and supplies. So that's for our Chromebook support if we need to buy like cords, cases, and replacement. And again, what we try to do is, as much as we can when it comes to materials and supplies and 220, is we try to procure through BOCES as much as we can. And the other things that you're looking at here is line 460. What I want to draw attention to is the overall cost that we're looking to request is going down. And the reason why you're seeing that cost go down, and when you're looking at the actual spend below, is because we've moved a lot of those software licenses over to BOCES. If you recall last year, why we do that is number one is for Ed Law 2D compliance and contract. So that way they're able to procure, they're able to negotiate on behalf of the district. We get a more aggressive pricing because when more districts purchase from the BOCES, they're able to get better prices on licensing. And then they're able to help with a lot of the Ed Law 2D compliance, which is huge for us. And the other biggest benefit, like Mr. Ricky was saying before, is the state aid that we receive on the back end. So we've shifted over the last 5 years a little over $115,000 over to that Lyric RFS. So that's why you're seeing that budget line continually go down. Any questions on any of the line items on C24? All right, excellent. So let's go to Appendix 5 in your budget book. In Appendix 5, I think it's going to be the third page on here. It's called the Lyric RFS.
It's right after I3.
Yeah, it's right after, I'm sorry about that. It's
The fourth page.
and it's after I3. So this is dated as of January 29th. There will be changes to this as we go along. Nothing that's going to be really different. You might see some different line items change, but let's go through like the big items that are going to be on here. So what you're going to notice is there's 5 coasters that are on here. 444, which is distance learning, 510, which is instructional tech, 554, which is model schools, 611, which is management services, and 612, which is in telepath. So coasters are actually created by New York State, and they're regulated by New York State. And the way that coasters work is that they're reflective of student use and the impact on learning. So for example, if we were to look at coaster 510, that gets an estimated 56% reimbursement back when you purchase through BOCES versus something like 611 and 612, where they're about 46 and 29% respectively on the back end in terms of reimbursement because they don't directly impact student learning. So that's how they create these different coasters, and that's why you see different line items in here. So for 444, you're going to notice that there's nothing in there. If you take a look on the left, that GCN online compliance training, and that's what we use in district for compliance training, That actually got moved to a different coaster. It got moved to 611. So that's why that looks zeroed out, but it's still there. So when we take a look at 444, that 0, it's just moved over. We're not using that iTutor service anymore. When we look at coaster 510, there's a couple of additions in here that are new. Learning A to Z, which is 510060, that's brand new on there. That used to sit in another coaster under library. They moved it over to the Lyric RFS. So that's why you're seeing that pop up in here. But everything else that you're looking in here is a rollover from last year in terms of what we're using. So there is nothing new that you're looking at that's different, necessarily different from last year. So that's all of the instructional technology within 510. When we look at 554 for our model schools and instructional service, so what you're going to notice is there's a line item for what's called general membership. That model school's general membership, on top of Alicia providing instructional technology professional development for our teachers, the Lyric provides also a lot of different online courses and in-person courses that teachers can sign up for professional development. So that's the cost of belonging to that service. And those are what you're looking at here with these kiosk services is the cost for each software in terms of licensing, the negotiations, and the holding of the contract through Lyric. So even though there's all these different kiosk ads on here, it's still cheaper for us to go through the Lyric even with those kiosk services on there. When we look at 611, which is management services, I want you to think that has LAN, that has ClassLink, Infinite Campus, and so forth. One of the things that was added onto the Lyric RFS for this year, obviously, is our new use of DataViz. That's a new addition on there, and Parent Square is also going to be under this as well. So that's under 611, and then 612 is in Telepath. So that's our internet services, and that's the entire Lyric RFS. And just remember, we are trying to always procure our stuff through the RIC. They're a great partner for us. And that's everything I have for you. Were there any questions when it comes to the Lyric RFS or anything that you're seeing on here?
We've added, things like Parent Square, DataViz. Any software that we can jettison that is sort of being retired, or?
Yeah, there is actually. There's 3. So let's take a look at the RFS. It's because it's not reflected on here yet. There's a line item 611475 called Forecast 5 that's used by the business office. We're going to be retiring that. There is a line item in here for, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to look for it real quick. For a data warehousing, it's called DW Teacher. We're going to be cutting that out as well. And we're going to be cutting back on some of our licensing within 510 to help make things like almost a little lower for that.
And just because there's no conversation regarding technology today that doesn't somehow include the letters AI and artificial intelligence, just curious, is there anything in here that you're thinking about that's, again, from a strategic perspective, we should be thinking about?
In terms of budget, not right now. I think with AI, it's always changing. So I think one of the more important things is to just make sure that we're sort of grounded in what we believe as a district in terms of AI. But in terms of like any sort of budgetary factors where I think AI is going to have any sort of influence, I don't think there's anything that I'm foreseeing that we're going to necessarily need right away. We do have allocation funds in case we want to pilot something or if we see something we like, because there are companies that are always being spun up. Magic School, School AI, outside of like the regular Chat GPT or Gemini.
Yeah.
But those are, again, these are all things that we are able to move forward with if we wanted to, but I think we're sort of in an exploratory stage right now.
Yeah, there's some personalized tutoring, like Conmigo.
There is.
That seems pretty powerful.
They are. They're extremely powerful. We're having we've had a lot of conversations at our secondary campus where Alicia and I have been able to work with Dr. Callahan and Dr. Thompson and their departments and actually show them what is it, what does this do? Because there's a lot of unknown with it, and it's always changing. So those conversations are part of the initial pieces, and then we're starting to see where we're going to go from there.
Do we have like a Turnitin?
We do.
That's
We
something
do
that
have
we
Turnitin.
subscribe?
Yep.
Okay.
We do subscribe to Turnitin. It's under, you wouldn't see it on any of my line items. It exists under library services.
Do you want to describe what Turnitin is?
Well, I mean, it's like a plagiarism.
It's a plagiarism checker,
and,
correct, yep.
Yeah, and it can check for maybe AI-generated
It
stuff.
says it can. It's interesting. I mean, we could have a whole different conversation around that. I don't want to go into, that part of it today, but there is a built-in AI detection tool within Turnitin. Any other questions? All right, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you, John. And if the board and the members can stay on that tab, Appendix 5.
Jim, do you have something that you got to pull up here?
Nope, we're all set, John, thank you. Again, we can just go through BOCES in a broader aspect. I think John did a great job kind of detailing exactly the part related to technology. When we talk about transportation, there'll be another part where we'll talk about our shared responsibilities and our partnership in transportation. And again, a little bit of history about BOCES. So BOCES was created in the 1940s, and it's a way for school districts, they make up, member school districts make up a BOCES. So we're part of the Southern Westchester BOCES. And it's a way for school districts to collaborate on educational programs, hopefully to be able to do that at a lower cost, or to be able to do things where, like in technology, where you do them in greater numbers and you can provide better services. So that's kind of why we use our BOCES. And at the same time, we have the benefit of receiving that revenue, that expense-based revenue on the following year. So that's really great. As we look at the page I-1, you can kind of see the buildup of our BOCES. It's a I-1 through I-3. Again, a number of all of the different things that we purchase through BOCES. Again, our board docs program, our climate survey, which was done last year, which is not part of this year's budget, this proposed budget. We have an administrative charge. Because we are a member district of BOCES, we do bear a cost of that, and that cost is borne out by all the districts. So as you can see, that's that $416,000 fee year to year. It's slightly down 0.3%. Budget to budget. Also for instructional services, we use BOCES. For occupational education, career technical education programs, we do have students use those programs, and we've budgeted for those programs at the level we have them for this year.
What's an example of one of those career technical?
So if a student chooses to pursue a career as a veterinarian technician, EMS, food services, forestry, those types of careers, plumbing. heating.
Arborist is in big demand.
Yeah.
The trees.
The trees, forestry, exactly.
Forestry, mhm.
So all of those types of programs are programs that are offered through the BOCES school and the BOCES campus.
So if a student in high school is interested in becoming a veterinarian?
A veterinarian technician.
A veterinarian technician, so what would how does that affect their school day?
Okay.
So it depends on the program.
Yeah.
Some of them are full day, some of them are half day. So the way that the core classes might be scheduled, they would be at the high school in the morning or in the afternoon, and at the other part of the day, they would go to BOCES. Some of them are full-time. It depends on the nature of the program and what the
Yeah.
requirements are. And if it's full-time, they're at BOCES full-time.
Right. I think there's a lot of possibility there. Like how many kids are engaged in that kind of activity?
A lot more than used to.
When I started in the district, we only budgeted for 10 slots. Now we've taken away that limit and we budget for whatever we get in demand, and that's increased now up to, I believe, 26 slots is what
Yeah,
we're
we're
paying.
checking.
This year, we had 16 last year. BOCES comes to our, every year to talk to the kids. You go your junior and senior year. You can't go before then.
Yep.
Because you've got to get in your requirements.
Sure.
And some of the articulations, depending on what you take, can fulfill certain requirements. So you could get your English 12 credit
through an articulation
wow.
there if so need be. It could sometimes fulfill an elective credit. So there's great opportunity to explore
Yeah.
what's available. Southern Westchester doesn't have arborists, but, yeah, unfortunately. So, you know, they have a certain amount of programming that they will offer that our kids will go to. So cosmetology is very popular, HVAC is very popular, data programming and computer science is very popular. They have some pre-engineering courses. Vet tech is very popular. So,
Do you have a sense of, do the students who go that route go to college afterwards, or?
in this particular district, a lot do. So I think it's a great opportunity for them to explore career interests. And some of these programs end in certifications.
Yeah.
So like EMS does end in a certification. HVAC may as well, the auto tech as well. They're pretty rigorous programs and hard to get through, and they can end in a certification
Credential,
exam,
yeah.
a credential that you could take with you. But a lot of our students do end up going on to college, just, you know, even having this is an enhancing type
You
of
have both. You have the
experience for
career,
them. Right,
you're career ready, and you can continue to
Exactly.
college. And
exactly.
Is this something we should be looking at expanding, do you think? Or expanding either exposure or slots, or like how should we
I think
think?
that's where we have started, we've opened up
Yeah.
the number of
We're
slots.
taking off the list, right.
Yeah, we're
taking
no
off the
longer
limit. Limiting.
predetermining that. So we have been working to make sure that the students understand their options, and so greater exposure, fewer hoops to jump through. We had a lot of hoops in place before, and by eliminating some of those steps, that's definitely increased our enrollment.
That's cool.
I mean, as we go through the budget, as in every year, we talk about that contingency. So say we have 26 budgeted, if 28 kids presented themselves, that's an area where then we would look to do that. Right, we want to provide that opportunity.
Jim, just real quick, looking ahead, do you see anything in these couple pages that we need the administrators for at this point? I know there's a few instructional things, but I'm thinking maybe we can handle those.
I think so. Again, it's really for those specialized services. I think that we're best able to be delivered through, again, the consortium of many districts, where we may have a need for one or two or five district-wide. When we combine it with many districts, we're able to provide, through BOCES, they're able to provide that service to all districts.
Okay.
But I don't think we have a need for the admins.
Okay, thank you all so much. I know it's super late. Thank you for enduring. Really appreciate your being here, appreciate all the work you did, and sleep fast.
It's getting windy.
We'll
It's
see
getting
you in
windy
the
out there, too.
morning.
Be careful. Yeah.
Thank you. Be careful getting home.
And again, you see the different things that we've had in the past too, say, iTutor, something not that we're subscribing to this year, but something that's been in the past. Interscholastic athletics, our officials for the sporting events, that's coordinated through BOCES. Health, wellness, and safety, we're our Alteris representative, and a school safety program. Again, BOCES heads up a school safety program. We have a textbook service. This is something where we have students who live in our district who don't attend our schools. And that doesn't matter, that doesn't mean we don't have requirements to help them. Part of that is transportation, out-of-district transportation, and another part of that is textbooks. So we use the BOCES service in coordination with their schools to make sure that they get the textbooks that they're entitled to. So it's another service where BOCES helps us with that. We have an arts and education program. That's where we work with the school class trips. And again, we receive that revenue-based aid in the following year. Translation services, again, a host of different things. I don't know if there's any questions on particular items I could.
One thing I just wanted to mention, I'd mentioned to the board, the climate survey. You know, I know we certainly spent a lot of time on that this year as part of the goals, and I think saw some really positive outcomes in approaching the budget. We also recognize that we did the communication survey last spring, and one of the recommendations there was for regular resurveying. So our recommendation going into this budget was maybe that we alternate between the two. The communication survey was a much lower cost item, and that's separate from BOCES. So that's where our proposal here. We certainly continue to be committed to the work and taking the lessons learned from the survey, and we'll be continuing to work with the administrators and carry those things forward, but thought it might make sense to alternate between the two. So I just wanted to make sure the board was fully aware of that.
And I guess another part of this is programs provided through for special education students. And again, our meeting on March 20th, that's when Tracy Holtz is going to provide the overview for special education as well. So I think at that point in time, the board will have an opportunity to learn more about that. And I think at Finance Committee, we're planning to get a meet and provide a little bit more depth on what's driving some of our costs related to that. I know, I'm hearing the rain behind us too. And then the last line you see there is transportation coordinator for, we call it BEPT, Bronxville, Eastchester, Pelham, Tuckahoe. That's our transportation consortium. There's a coordinator, again, that heads that up for all of our 4 districts. We work cooperatively for our out-of-district transportation. So again, it's a program that works well. And again, it's good having the districts down in this area working on that program.
Okay. I think that covers it for tonight.
2 more to go?
All right. This was the big
Decisions?
lift. This is always the biggest
Yeah,
lift.
this is a big one.
So, Jim, thank you. Jackie, thank you. If you're still awake over there, I can't see.
Thank you,
Really,
thank you.
just always, the level of detail and attention that you put on this is really just incredible. And something I've never seen in any other district, to this level of
It's a lot.
detail, this level of transparency.
And there's going to be inquiry, and things are going to change. And as we go through that, certainly that's part of the updates with the board, and then a final budget for the board to vote on in April, to put on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, unfortunately, we do still have a little bit of business to do. But we kept it to only that which was absolutely necessary to keep the business of the district moving forward. So I think that would bring us to 6.1.
Do we have donations?
There is a donation, it got out of order tonight. Unless, I'm thinking, did they move it? I thought it was 6 point, yes, 6.4.
6.4.
It cuts off on the bottom, it cuts right.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, so I would propose a motion to approve 6.1 through 6.3 as a consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and any comments or questions about these items? Budget transfers, special education tuition rates, participation in BOCES cooperative bids.
No, this is pretty much standard
Okay.
Yes.
approval. of
I
keep
think those
things-
rates are kind of what I talked about a little bit earlier, so.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? No. Then 6.4 is a motion to accept a donation. Somebody would like to make a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, and I'll read this. The Board of Education does hereby accept the monetary donation of $6,000 for the second installment toward the Hutchinson School after-school math program for 4th and 5th graders for the 23-24 school year, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Friends of the Pelham Civic Association. The Board of Education authorizes the superintendent to accept further donations for such purposes through the end of the 23-24 school year. Be it further resolved that the Board of Education does hereby accept the donation of $1,320 to be used to purchase books for the Hutchinson School Special Book Program, which allows families to commemorate a special event or milestone in the life of a student by gifting books in their names, and that gratitude be bestowed upon their donor, the Hutchinson School community. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education does hereby accept a monetary donation resulting from the dissolution of the Lieutenant Joseph G. Levy Foundation. The amount is currently unknown but approximates to $13,000. And gratitude is hereby bestowed upon its donor, the Lieutenant Joseph G. Levy Foundation.
Any commentary on the last one?
I can add some background if that's helpful to the board. Lieutenant Levy perished, 9/11, FDNY member. In the former Hutchinson School, there was a plaque dedicated to Lieutenant Levy, kind of on the corner of
Third and Lincoln.
Third and Lincoln, thank you, right on the corner there. So we have collected that plaque amongst with the other plaques on that site. And that was another discussion item at our facilities meeting yesterday, working on putting together a proper way to honor those that were previously remembered at the former Hutchinson School and incorporating that into the new Pocket Park area at that corner. So again, this relates back to FDI member Lieutenant Levy, and I believe he's a Hutchinson parent as well.
But the $13,000-ish that is coming our way, where does that go? What does it get used on? Do we know?
That can be undetermined at this time. They're in the process of dissolving that what do we call it, that foundation. So as we know more information, we'll bring that forward to the board. I don't think we expect that to be something that's simply absorbed into the general fund. I think that we'd want a dedicated purpose for
That's
those
what
funds.
I was sort of
Yeah.
getting at, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I always, on 9/11, try to read about some of the people, and there's another name
Yeah.
that we can remember. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? No. Then 6.5 is a motion to approve calendar for the 24-25 school year budget.
Yes.
So would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And
And that, the budget schedule is right there as part of that resolution, just highlighting the key milestones of the budget process. So the budget proposal, the line-by-line portions of the budget, the adoption, state-mandated budget hearing, and then the budget vote and member election itself. One important item of note, as the board knows, at our last meeting, we approved the board meeting dates. We revised the calendar to include the strategic planning work sessions. So many of these meetings will actually begin at 3:30 with the strategic planning. This budget calendar only highlights the portion that relates to the budget. So, for example, March 20th, I think that's one that will begin at 3:30. We'll do 3:30 to 6:30 of strategic planning, executive session, and then the budget work will begin at 7:30 as indicated on the calendar. So I know that we had a little bit of conversation. I know we need to firm up. There are a lot of logistical issues around the being able to get the room set up and live stream and all that, given that we're in the school setting. So my recommendation at this point is that certainly we want the public will remain open to the public for the strategic planning sessions, but to not actually live stream those. We'll have the students' school end, let the students get dismissed, custodians come in and get the room set up, absolutely open to the public. But we wouldn't have a live stream available for that portion. But absolutely, what I would recommend is then, when we do open our public meeting, the regular business meeting, that we provide an update of what occurred in that workshop session, if that's amenable to the board. And that would, I know that would help out logistically.
respectful towards our valued
Yes.
AV team.
Yes. Yeah, we want to make things feasible for our custodians, for our AV team, and at the same time facilitate the work of the board. So.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
And that motion carries.
And for people who are interested in getting a copy of the paperwork, do you have printouts at the business office like you normally
For the
do?
budget?
Yeah, for the budget.
So it's up on the webpage.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
That went up this afternoon.
That went up this afternoon,
Yeah, that was as
yes.
soon as we could
And it's at the library or something too? Is that-
When the final budget is ready for
Oh, I see.
visibility, yes,
Okay.
we'll have that.
And that's like a law?
We'll have them
or-
at the schools and the library, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I would accept a motion to approve items 7.1 through 7.4 as a consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and this has our,
Yes.
happy for your new opportunity, but sad to see you go item.
Yes. I will make one note. I did make a clerical adjustment to Dr. Bowman's. It had the word irrevocable. That wasn't necessary. So that's in 7.1, item 1, Alice Bowman. The printed copy says irrevocable resignation, but that, I removed that in the actual agenda, so just recommending to approve that as amended.
Okay, so the word irrevocable is stricken.
Correct.
Okay, any other comments or about these items? No. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. And then, okay, that's it, right? There's no more,
No public, so no more public
and
comment?
so I'll accept them.
Yeah, sure. Make us just a final point of information. I've been working with Alex and Ian on putting together an information session regarding the cell phone policy, that some folks to speak about how they're implementing cell phone policies in different schools and around the nation. So our policy committee is actually meeting tomorrow to, I think, hopefully be looking at a first draft of potential policy. And so March 6th, there will be an opportunity for folks to join a remote panel to see how other folks around the nation are addressing cell phone use. So that email will be coming out, and that'll be followed by an opportunity for parent engagement, World Cafe style session. Really hoping that high school parents in particular, or soon-to-be high school parents, may come and be part of that, so we can get some feedback on that. And that'll be
March 6th at noon.
Thank you. March 6th at noon, and we're making it remote so that it can be accessible to folks.
And not
And
that
that-
you should ever emulate the British, but in the United Kingdom, at sort of or maybe it's just England, the equivalent of a sort of federal level is edging towards a nationwide cell phone ban.
Oh, yeah.
So it's worth just, as a data point, looking at,
Oh, yeah.
looking at, maybe not a cell phone ban, but some enforcement. FYI, feel free to ignore it if you want.
No, I'm aware.
Okay, great.
Okay, and I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Excellent.
Do these pages go in the budget book?
Yes.
Okay.